What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason.
Somebody lowered this last time they were here. There we go. Now we're in good shape. We left off right before the briefing, which you access in the game on the start menu. So before you start a new game, if you filter through the options there in the start menu, you'll access this briefing, which is just a series of like security cam sort of recordings of Snake as he was briefed on this mission that he's about to do. So if you didn't see that, it's more or less just a much longer version of all the stuff Campbell says
at the very
narrating as like the sub is approaching Shadow Moses,
sub.
And Snake is inside a little SDV and it shoots out. All that dialogue that's going over the top of that sequence, there's a lot longer, more detailed version that happens in the briefing. So we're going to go through that first before we actually get into that. For those of you who are wondering, there were some people asking about this. How much will we or are we going to talk about the Twin Snakes version of the game? So what I'm planning on doing, we'll see if it happens, is to do a playthrough, or at least a semi-playthrough of the Twin Snakes version to get a sense of how it feels to play.
Okay.
But I am also watching the cutscenes from the Twin Snakes version for comparison.
Okay.
So, I have a couple notes on that, and mostly, like, from what I can tell so far, it's not, like, super different in terms of dialogue or voice acting or, like, the story itself, but the cutscenes, cinematography, and animation in particular are really different. And it does really change how certain things feel.
I haven't seen anything from Twin Snakes at all.
Yeah.
I might do that this coming week.
Now, there are some differences in the translation. I'm not saying there's none, but they're, in my opinion, minor. There are some cases where I feel one was stronger than the other and back and forth.
Yeah.
But for the most part, so far, it has been more or less like 85% the same.
Okay.
Maybe 90%.
The voice acting, is it the exact same recordings, or are they new
Nope,
recordings?
they re-recorded it because some of the dialogue is different.
Okay.
There are certain parts cut or changed, but it's like a line here or there. It's not like that much.
Okay.
So anyway, we will be touching on Twin Snakes a little bit. So let's get started here. So at the end of Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, Snake retires to Alaska. And because this mission is happening on Shadow Moses Island, which is an island in the Fox archipelago, of Alaska, this is why they go after Snake to bring him back in forcibly to make him listen to this briefing and, well, even more or less force him to accept, though Campbell feels like he knows even if he weren't being forced, he would accept it anyways. This new mission. So that's kind of where it starts. It's like the video starts up. It's got this really cool sort of hand-drawn, well, it's pixelated, but it looks kind of like maybe like a comic book or something. The style of the art here. As Campbell is talking to him, you'll have like that shot of Snake kind of sitting there, and then they'll just have like a shadow layer sort of like walk in front.
Kind of like a 2D thing,
but it's cool. It's cool.
No, I like it. It's stylized. Yeah.
The style is really awesome, I feel like. And that is one major difference between this and the Twin Snakes version. In the Twin Snakes, I mean, the suggestion here is that this is being recorded via security cams because they have that filter on it that makes it look like, kind of like a CRT, what is it called?
Scan lines.
Scan lines, on top of it, and it'll sort of like, go out, and then it's like you put a new tape in and you watch like the next part. So that's true, but the compositions of the PS1 version are much more cinematic and comic book-like, where you get close-ups of Snake's face, and you see the briefing material, whether it be
the files,
profiles and maps and things handed over to him. You see that like up front in the camera, which you wouldn't see from a security cam, really.
Right.
But it's way more stylized and cool than what they did in Twin Snakes, which is they literally just have security cams, and Snake and Campbell are like kind of far away from the camera. And so when he's handing him over files, it's like you see Snake looking at it, but you don't see it. And a lot of this is something I talked about. Geez, when was this? I can't remember if it was for Final Fantasy Tactics or some other game, where when you're giving a lot of expositional dialogue, it really helps to not just have, reverses of your characters talking the whole time, but to show like a map.
Lots of
when
things,
people are talking about lands and places, and do some kind of animation, like Raiders of the Lost Ark style,
of course.
right?
Yeah.
Where you show where they're going. And so in the PS1 version, they do that. It's like he'll talk about Shadow Moses Island, and he hands over a map of the archipelago, and he shows you where Shadow Moses Island is.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying it and like handing over a file from afar, right?
Yeah.
Or when he's talking about Psycho Mantis and Sniper Wolf and Vulcan Raven.
Yeah, all the names,
And even some of the team members you're going to have, like Nastasha, I think her name is, the weapons specialist, the nuclear specialist that's assigned to you from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
They show her picture and they show her profile, and you can read more about her life. And that's not the case in the Twin Snakes version. It's just Snake's looking at it, and then he sets it on the bed that he's sitting on. But there were a couple of other things that were a little more clear in that version. So anyways, I'll kind of get into that as we go along, but that's kind of the major difference between the two versions of this scene. So he's sitting there, presumably naked. In the Twin Snakes version, he's got like some boxer shorts on, but it makes more sense to me if he is, because of what he says to Dr. Naomi when she comes in. But anyways, he's not a colonel anymore, but he was a colonel at the time that he commanded Foxhound when Snake was in Foxhound.
Yeah, that reminded me a little bit of like Mass Effect kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like the previous commander is now the head leader, and you're the new.
Yes. So he had retired, Roy Campbell had, and he's been brought back out of retirement for this mission as well. That's something important to remember. I'm not going to talk about why just yet, but just keep that in mind for later. They're bringing a lot of people out of retirement, particularly these two who were previously in Foxhound. Roy Campbell had sent Black Ops soldiers to like capture Snake and like bring him in forcibly. They did this presumably because they're desperate, and they really, really need him to hear them out. And he's been in retirement for a few years now, because I think 1997 or 99 was when Metal Gear 2 happened.
Yeah, something like that.
This game happens in 2005. So it's been 6-ish years since Snake was in Foxhound, and they're bringing him back in now. But anyways, he's been brought in not by his own will.
Yeah.
So, they kind of talk about that a little bit. I think Snake mentions, like, I don't owe this country anything. I don't owe you anything. I'm not a patriot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you'll hear these orders, basically, Campbell's saying. This is when Dr. Naomi Hunter enters. She was the chief of Foxhound's medical staff. She's an expert in gene therapy. This is big.
Particularly. This is kind of the theme of the whole game, and she plays a huge part in it.
Yes. So, I didn't mention this in the first episode, the film and history episode, but with this series, with the Metal Gear series, particularly starting with Solid, with the Solid part of that series, the 3D games, there's sort of a chain of like the theme that is being explored that Hideo Kojima has talked about, and he has like a specific word that acts as like the lens through which we view the theme of the game.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid, the word is gene.
Gene, yeah.
So a lot about genetics, genetically modifying soldiers, that sort of thing. And again, we talked about the reason why is because this was kind of a big talking point in the mid-90s. The human genome is going to be sequenced soon. What is that going to mean? That's kind of what he's looking at with this. The Metal Gear Solid 2, the word is meme.
Meme.
Now,
so the mimetics. Yeah.
Yes. Now I actually had looked up the word meme, like the definition of it.
Oh, because it's a cultural artifact. Right?
Yes. What we know it as is picture jokes on Twitter.
It's a joke.
And that's true, but that's not.
Well, the
exactly
true part
what it
about the
means.
picture jokes is that they're culturally significant. That it's like a cultural artifact, right? Where we can both look at Michael Scott saying no, and we laugh because we
Yes.
watched the show, we were in
Right.
the culture, we understand. Whereas somebody who wasn't part of our culture doesn't have the memory, the
Yes.
meme within their background, then they won't get it, right? So
Yes.
it still fulfills the thing, but it's not. Yeah.
Yes.
A picture with text. That's
Yes.
that's what a meme is.
That's not what a meme is. The
Nah.
reason that is
No,
called
no.
a meme is because, as this definition has here,
Yes,
it's
Richard
an
Dawkins.
idea, a behavior, a style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture.
Yes.
So that's what that joke,
Yeah.
that picture image joke is doing. It's spreading, and people are
Yes.
taking it and sort of reusing it again.
Right.
That's also part of the definition.
Yes.
But the idea is that it's something that is being passed from person to person
Yeah,
within
through
a culture.
memory. And that's the idea. I think Richard Dawkins in The Selfish Gene, he talks about extended phenotypes, right? Which
Mm.
is like the world outside of humans, but that's within the influence of humans, right?
Right.
And those things get internalized, and like tool usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not genetic. You teach your kids how to do it, and then they learn how to do it because you showed them
Yes.
how to do it.
Right.
It becomes mimetic, right? But it participates in the external phenotype. So phenotypes being like your outward expression of your genes, right?
Right.
Like skin color, eye color, hair color, all that stuff. But then an extended phenotype is like for a beaver, the extended phenotype is the dam that the beaver builds.
Yes.
Right? That's part of the beaver.
Right.
Right? But it's actually, that one might actually be a little more genetic now that I think about it. It's crazy how certain
Yes.
animals just on genes can do stuff. But for humans, for the most part, we operate almost, like not entirely, but on a large part, we operate on memes, on memory, on how to use a computer, especially as we get more technologically advanced. We're
Yes.
separating more and more from the genes, and the memes are in control,
Yes. And that's a big part, too, of what this game is sort of looking at is the nature versus nurture kind
Yes.
of like concept.
Huge.
How much
Huge.
of what makes a great soldier,
Is
so
genetic.
amazing, how much of that is genetic versus, taught or learned
Right, exactly.
through nurturing versus just their nature, right?
Yes.
And that's actually right here in the opening scene.
Oh, that's great. That's
So, anyways, Gene is the first game's lens through which
Yeah.
it has its theme to look through. Meme is the second game. By second game, I mean Metal Gear Solid 2.
great. Solid too.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is Scene.
Scene. Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 4 is Sense.
SCENE, right?
Yeah, here's the
I was
tweet.
just clarifying for.
Yeah,
'cause it
so
sounds
here's
the same.
yeah, here's the
Yeah,
tweet
we'll put
from
this up.
Hideo Kojima. Put it on. You have Gene that goes to meme, meme to scene. Scene as in like a movie scene, not
movie
as in like
scene.
scene.
Yeah.
Sense as in your five senses. Then Peace after that, which was Peace Walker, the game Peace
right.
Walker. And then
Okay.
after that, it was leading up to Metal Gear 5 when he tweeted this back in 2012, which became Revenge. So that's kind of like what it is viewing that game through. I think there was two for that game though. It was Revenge and there was one other. Let me go back and look at it again. And Race. Revenge and Race were Metal Gear 5 related. So,
Interesting.
anyways, so there's going to be a lot of stuff about genetics.
But it builds on the base, which is the bottom, which is genetics, right?
Yes.
And it kind of builds up from there.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So that's an interesting.
So the
sequence.
whole series has sort of like a chain, a thematic chain that it follows.
Yeah.
And sort of builds on. So it's like the foundation is being built here with the genetic
with the genetics.
theme, and then it's going to kind of just build on that with each game.
Yeah.
It's not like moving on to a different thing. It's like just increasing it or building upon a foundation.
Building up to Revenge, which is kind of surprising.
After Peace,
have guessed.
especially.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Naomi Hunter comes in. She's the gene therapy expert, and she comes to give Snake an injection. Now, in the PS1 version of this, because it's kind of just like a picture you're looking at, there's not a lot of animation happening on it. It gave the sense to me that she's like preparing the needle or something, and he's asking her,
What's
what is
in
this
it?
for?
Yeah, what is this?
And she says, what's wrong? You don't like shots? And then just gives him the shot.
So no
Which
no
seems
informed consent.
So dodgy, and exactly.
Yes.
Now, of course,
He's a dog of the government, you know.
Yes.
He does what he's told. It's not like he has any say.
right.
Right.
And so, like, but in
Who
the
cares?
in the Twin Snakes version, it's like she gives him the shot, and as it's actually being injected, then he asks, "Oh, what's in it?" So it felt a little different.
Ah, that's different. That is
right?
different.
But I kind of like the former better, where it's
I do.
they don't.
Yeah.
They're not really like telling him
No,
what they
and
should
they
be
don't
telling
treat
him.
him like a conscious participant in the scheme,
Yes.
in the plan, you know.
Yeah.
They're like, you do things, but you're separate from the planning peoples, which is us.
Yes.
You're just the body that's going to go do the stuff.
Yes.
Which means you're our body, which
Right.
means as long as we want it, that's what gets done.
When a gene therapy expert comes and gives you a
Yeah.
shot and doesn't tell you what it is,
Yeah, be
I'd
suspicious.
be pretty concerned.
Be suspicious. Be very suspicious.
Anyways, she does later explain that it's a combination of nanomachines and an anti-freezing peptide because he's going to be
that's right.
swimming in the Arctic Ocean of
Yeah.
Alaska.
dude. Yeah, like really cold.
So he's going to have this suit that he's wearing, which is like the latest, technology to
Yeah.
keep him warm, but also this anti-freezing peptide she's put into his bloodstream.
Yeah, it sounds like a bad idea, but
Yeah,
maybe it
but
would work.
apparently all the other soldiers there have something like it as well, which keeps
Yeah.
them from freezing. So it's the only thing that keeps him alive during that infiltration sequence. The only reason he can get in there is
Yeah.
because she gave him this shot. But the nanomachines also resupply him with adrenaline and nutrition and sugar in his bloodstream.
Yeah, and I think they can even potentially give him like painkillers and other types of things that are
Right.
just like pre-programmed in.
So he's like, oh, nice, I don't have to worry about food like while I'm there, right? And then also,
Breathe air.
she also says nootropics or nootropics, which is a class of drugs that improves mental functioning. So he's like, oh, so you made me smarter, huh? You know? And then Benzedrine, I can't remember which it was, which is a drug that will keep him awake. So he, it keeps him alert. Because he's going to be there for 18-ish hours, right? So,
Can't get sleepy.
yeah. Also, the nanomachines will charge his codex batteries. So
Oh,
he
that's
can
right.
constantly stay in.
And the codex operates by, it's like internal, and
Yes.
it just vibrates the bones of his ear.
Yeah.
So no one else can hear it.
Right.
Only he can hear
Only
it.
he can hear. Yep.
And that's important. Well, that's important to understand because often we'll be talking on the codex like in very high stakes situations and we're just like on our phone, just like, hey Campbell, what do I do? But that doesn't explain when we respond though.
Right, when we
I'm pretty
talk.
sure we'd still have to talk out loud. So it covers about half of the awkwardness
Maybe they have another one in his
in the
vocal
throat where he
cords,
just goes,
and he can just
You
talk
just whisper.
really quietly and they can hear him.
maybe. I don't know how well that would work though. I wonder.
Anyway, so after that sequence, he throws a joke out there. I guess I can call you when I'm ready to go on a diet. So you can just have like nanomachines.
Just have the machines.
Give
just-
him nutrition.
Yeah,
he doesn't
eat
have to
all
eat.
of the fat. That's funny.
Now this leads me to something else I wanted to talk about. We sort of touched on this last time, but I kind of want to say it again. There is a tone here, which sort of like it rides between, like we said, the absurd or the ridiculous.
Yeah, the
and then
silly.
the really philosophically deep. But then in the middle of
Yes.
that is also kind of this B action movie cool factor.
That's like the garment that it's wearing. Like
Yes.
it is this thing, but on the outside it's presented in this form of this 80s B action movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was a good comment about this that I want to read from last week really quick. It was from Heon about his reasoning why he thinks that it works, like moving.
Because I mentioned the voice, that Snake's voice
Yes.
puts you in that weird state where you're kind of willing to go either way, to the absurd or to the philosophical.
Yes. I really like the gist of it is like there's self-awareness in everything here.
Yes.
It feels very intentional.
Yes.
And so like being able to feel that helps you know like this wasn't like, oh, the guy made this really cringy not knowing that this actually isn't cool. You know what I mean?
I would argue that there are at least a couple points where that may have happened.
That's what the other guy says.
But for the most part, yes, it is very self-aware, which a lot of the B movie action flicks were more or
Yes.
less self-aware.
Yes.
Like they knew the budget-wise, they weren't doing the things that, maybe the big movies could do, but that they were still, doing whatever with what they had. There was actually, like Sam Raimi's Evil Dead is a great example of that. I know that's more of a horror film, but it's very self-aware of what it is.
Sam Raimi movies in general
Just
are
in
super
general.
self-aware.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that it's almost like the priority here is fun. Above,
Yes,
like,
exactly.
trying to make
Exactly.
some, profound work of art or something.
Right.
And so when
It's an
choices
experience, right?
about tone have to be made, it's like, well, we're trying to make this fun and
Right.
so the jokes, the one-liners,
Yeah.
the hitting on the girls in these situations
Yeah.
where it would not
Where it
be
wouldn't make
realistic
sense,
to
yeah.
do that, are always going to take the precedence because first of
Yeah.
all, we're trying to make people have fun with this story, right?
And you know what? This game is very fun.
It is.
Like, even just the story. It's a fun story.
Yeah. So what Heon says here is, my personal theory for why Metal Gear Solid manages to get away with the abrupt tonal extremes is because of the heightened realism, he puts in quotes, and absurdity of the game as a whole that flags its own tones up front in such a way that audiences can spot not only its deliberancy, but also the marks of the creator's social awareness. The presence of the game is already, or the premise of the game is already absurd. A single guy taking on a small army of terrorists and a giant mecha.
Yeah.
Right, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And things like Psycho Mantis's power is exposited with full seriousness and dramatic gravitas, sandwiched between military tech and political jargon.
Right.
You're never left to wonder whether this stuff made its way into the game by accident as a result of Kojima and co. being tone deaf or not recognizing what they're doing. On top of the fact that the game itself frequently delivers its absurdities with an ironic and self-aware charm that endears the audience to the choices.
Including breaking the fourth wall several
Yes,
times. Several
right.
times.
Metal Gear Solid's camp, as opposed to, say, certain other Japanese games that I won't mention by name, is the distinction between your middle-aged uncle making a funny yet inappropriate joke at a family dinner that reflects his understanding of the room and life experience, as opposed to, say, a 16-year-old MMO player choosing the username XX Dark Sephiroth Assassin XX, having watched Advent Children a few too many times. The essence of something being cool and functionally absurd versus not being it is basically a matter of doing it in a way that reflects self-awareness and a lack of cringy pretensions. Now, I want to read the first response to that because I do think that it's a good point.
Yes.
While I agree with some of your assessment, I definitely... Oh, this is Aaron Nicewanger, by the way. While I agree with some of your assessment, I definitely think that Metal Gear Solid as a series isn't lacking in cringy pretensions, and the absurdity and camp goes overboard with Metal Gear Solid 2. I enjoyed MG1 and 2 and Solid, so Metal Gear 2, and Metal Gear Solid. But with Metal Gear Solid 2 and everything after,
future games. Gotcha.
it was too over the top and silly for me, to the point that it drastically undercut any of the serious elements. And Heon goes on to say it's a perfectly valid take. And whatnot.
Fair enough. They both have very good points. So.
Sure.
Yeah. Nice.
So, anyways, I was kind of struggling to voice like why I felt that it works in Metal Gear Solid. And I did watch some cutscenes from Metal Gear Solid 4 last night as I was kind of preparing notes. And I absolutely see the where it starts going too far.
Yeah, yeah.
Metal Gear Solid, I feel, is like it rides the line almost perfectly all the way
very
through.
well, yeah.
There's a spot here or there where maybe it doesn't, but
Yes.
almost all the time it seems to really work and fit. In the same way that something like Kung Fury does, the online short film,
so funny,
that is a parody of 80s action movies.
80s, yeah.
And it just now that's more of a parody, and Metal Gear Solid isn't.
Yes.
It leans more serious than that does. But
Yes,
the
that's
point
true,
is,
true.
there's a self-awareness to it and a social awareness that you just know the guy knows his material. He knows what he's copying, and he does it in a way that is really funny and on point, and it's just perfectly, and it's fun. It's so much fun to watch. And this feels similar.
Yeah.
Just more on the dramatic side than on the comedy side of things. Though it does have its fair share of comedy.
It is quite funny. I typed LOL into my notes way too many times.
I did too, actually. A lot of times, like this thing I wrote, lol. Like it's just...
You know what's funny, just for people who don't know us, which is I guess all of you, We don't use
Oh,
LOL.
we don't say LOL.
We say it ironically, but it makes it funnier.
Yeah,
It makes it funnier
I actually
to
forgot
just put
people
lol
don't do that.
sometimes. I know.
I forgot people don't say lol.
That's like an AOL Instant Messenger thing from
Yeah.
like 20 years ago. I think some people might still say lol.
Anyways, yeah.
Nowadays it's just the emoji with the smiley face and the
Right.
the X.
The crying
Yeah.
face, laughing face. Okay, anyway, so I just wanted to make that point real quick. And in addendum to that, I guess, in the Twin Snakes version of this scene, and in Twin Snakes in general, this is just like a general criticism most people that I share of Twin Snakes. It takes its animation and cinematics to that level of absurd, to where it steps over that line in the same way that MGS4 does for me. Where it's just like, this is so silly that it's dumb now.
It's almost
Right.
like what would you call it? The limitations of early hardware, the limitations money-wise, the limitations like team, how big his team was, that was all a good thing for him.
Yes.
That just like George Lucas with his
Yes.
special edition and stuff, it's like once you are able to actually do what you actually really did want to do to begin with,
Yes.
all of a sudden people are like, oh, that's what this was supposed to be like. It's just a lot less interesting, I guess.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
But, Kojima, you make your name, then you get the budget, and then you can do really what you want to do. And most people are excited. They're like, oh, let's see what he can really do. For the most part, most artists, I think, the constraints actually make their art better.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's proven time and time again, particularly with the stuff that we look at.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, in the Twin Snakes version of this scene, you have like these parts, like the part where he's like, I'm not a patriot, I don't owe you or this country anything. Right?
Yeah.
In the PS1 version, he's still sitting down and he says that, and he's escalating a little bit with his voice, but it's not like crazy. In the Twin Snakes version, he gets up and he's like shoving Campbell around, and it's just like, okay, dude, like that's just that's just kind of dumb. Like, but then later in the scene, they're like touching each other's shoulders and talking and being endearing. It's just like anyway. There's some really dumb animation that's supposed to be funny, I think, but isn't in the Twin Snakes version of this scene. And so if you want to take a look at the two of those in light of what Heon's comment was, sort of like, you'll start to see the point, I feel.
Good.
Okay, so let's actually get into the brief. Campbell starts to brief him on what's going on. So, 5 hours ago, previous to this moment, Foxhound, which is now commanded by Liquid Snake, led a group of next-generation special forces to take over a nuclear disposal facility on Shadow Moses Island, which, like we said, is off the coast of Alaska in the Fox Archipelago, which is a real thing.
Yeah.
Shadow Moses Island obviously isn't a real island, but
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe it is.
I was actually looking at it. And I was like, it would be awesome if, like, I don't know, someday that you were to do a cruise to Alaska, because they do those, right?
Yeah.
And you like take a boat out and it's like, I found Shadow Moses Island. Yeah.
Found it. Take a selfie.
That'd be sweet. Anyways, this is why they came for Snake, though, because Snake had retired to Twin Lakes, Alaska, which is kind of in the southernish part near where that archipelago kind of tapers off of Alaska there. So the terrorists have given Washington a single demand. They want the remains of Big Boss.
Yeah. They want his DNA.
Yes. So
his genes.
As Campbell says here, to be more accurate, cell specimens which contain the individual's genomic information.
Yep.
The terrorists need them. You see, these next generation special forces have been strengthened through gene therapy. You've heard of the Human Genome Project. They've been mapping the human genome, and they're nearly finished. Following up on this research, the military's been working towards identifying those genes which are responsible for making effective soldiers. Using gene therapy, they're able to transplant those genes into regular soldiers. So the idea here is the human genome is nearly finished being sequenced. When that's done, we'll know what makes the most awesome soldier ever. Yeah. Then we can just give those genes to all of our soldiers, and all of our soldiers will be the most awesome soldier ever. And whoever has that technology will now be the best army in the world, kind of a thing, right? So in essence, what the terrorists want is the genomic information of the greatest soldier of all time,
Yeah.
Big Boss,
Big
so
Boss.
that they can begin giving that to their own soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So, I forgot the term. What is the term when you ask the question back, or ask questions over and over again?
In Japanese?
Yes.
Izuchi.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we talked
Oh,
about
that's a lot of that. So I'd actually take some notes on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about Izuchi
Yes.
in the
Xenogears
Final Fantasy VIII. Oh no,
and
Xenogears.
FF8. Probably
Xenogears.
both. Probably both, though.
For sure, the first episode of Xenogears, we had
For
like
sure.
a lengthy segment on that.
Yes.
And I remember even back then, all these people were talking about in the comments, Metal Gear. Just typing that into the
Yes.
comments. That's basically what Snake does through the whole game.
It is. The whole game, he just restates the question, or restates
Yes.
the statement in the form of a question.
Yes, to get more information.
To get
about
more
it.
info.
So if you want a more, because some people watching this probably haven't seen that.
Yeah.
If you have not seen that segment of what the concept of Izuchi is in Japanese, go watch that because it sounds weird in English.
Yeah.
But it's a very common thing in Japanese.
Very common. It's actually a good way to learn Japanese is to
Yeah.
practice Izuchi a lot. As
Yes.
people start talking to you, but can buy yourself a little bit of time by repeating the last few words they said back to them in the
Yes.
form of a question.
Yes.
Even if it's a question to yourself.
Yes.
That's common in Japanese. Often when you'll see a question, sometimes they're asking it to themselves. But it's still Izuchi, and then you can give an actual response. Yeah.
Right.
It's good stuff.
So you'll see that all the time.
Yeah.
He'll always ask, he'll talk about gene therapy, and then they'll go on about it. And then he'll ask a question about that, and then they'll keep going on about it.
Yeah.
Go watch the first podcast for Xenogears to learn more about that.
Yeah.
So this is where Naomi Hunter steps in, the doctor. She says, I'll explain this part. With gene therapy, we can remove those genes which we know may lead to sickness or disease, and at the same time splice in genes with beneficial effects, such as resistance to cancer, for example. And then Campbell comes back in. In other words, we can overcome all sorts of genetic diseases and at the same time add genetic characteristics as desired. The strongest soldiers don't...
Yeah.
Oh, this is Naomi again. And this is key here. The strongest soldiers don't become what they are by acquiring their skills through training or experience. We now know that hereditary factors are far more crucial for creating superior soldiers. So what she's saying is that the genetic factor, the nature, is more important to making a great soldier
Yes.
than the nurture, the teaching part.
And that is Naomi's position in
as a
in the
gene
story.
therapist.
Yes, as a gene therapist. I mean, it makes
So
sense.
it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not. Now, it's funny. Hearing this is funny. If any of you are interested as to whether this is like real science, it's kind of not really.
Yes. This would probably have been speculation
Yes.
at the time.
Where it's like, oh, once we sequence the genome, we can do this or that. It's like, well, not really, kind of, but it's way more complicated than that. And then the other part here about finding like the genes that turn on cancer and stuff. So it's like we can repair your cells easily, but then also prevent cancer.
Yes.
But the I don't know, the what would you call it? The parts of the cells that
nucleus?
are geared towards repair. Well, the cells specifically that
Oh.
are geared towards repair. I guess it would be part of the DNA and the genes. If it gears towards repair, that becomes cancer. The cells begin to repair and replicate themselves without control.
Oh,
so you actually don't want excessive repairing for your cells. You want to allow a little bit of the decay and the what would you call it, the unraveling of the DNA kind of
Yeah.
at the ends, at the telomeres and stuff.
Yes.
You don't want to just repair every single problem, because eventually there will become a problem that the body starts doing repairs for that it didn't need to fix, and that's cancer. That
Yes.
literally is cancer. So anyways, what they're saying here is that, oh, we'll be able to repair and prevent cancer like perfectly, is what we understand a little more now is like that's kind of the problem
Yes.
with cancer, is that your
Right.
body is trying to repair itself a little
Right.
too much. So anyways, this is not yet come to pass, I'll just put it
Yes.
that way.
This is
It's been 25 years.
This is part of the problem with, kind of taking from what modern science understands at the time you're writing your story and making some kind of prediction
Into
for
the future.
a near future
Yeah.
time period.
Even just a few
Even just
years.
10 years away.
Yeah, I think 7 years. This game came out in 98,
I
and
think it was
2005.
96 this game came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it would have been
And then in 90.
9
Okay,
years.
yeah, you got it. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so, yeah, even, but, you know, if you're going to predict 200 years into the future, well, you won't be
Good
around.
freaking
So
luck, man.
when people criticize you for the
Yeah.
things you didn't see correctly, at least you won't be around to see that, right?
Right.
But
But with this
people
one,
who-
it's just a few short years, and it's like, hey, we've already
yeah,
passed that.
yeah, it's
That's wrong.
the whole Back to the Future effect, right?
Oh,
it's like
yes.
2015, he goes
And
into the future,
everyone's
and everyone's
taking
got
pills for food and
flying cars,
flying cars.
and like what was it? They did the dehydrated food where they put it into a thing, and it like the little pizza becomes the big pizza.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I
or-
can't remember that actually.
Anyways, there's all this technology that's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's nothing like the world
Dude,
7
shoes,
years ago.
self-lacing sneakers.
Yep.
Man.
Yep, all
that was
kinds
cool.
of stuff. Floating
Yeah, skateboards.
skateboards. Now
Yeah.
that movie's not trying to accurately predict. It was trying to be a fun movie.
Yeah,
But and I think I've brought this up other times. Isaac Asimov, who was really good at this, by the way,
yeah.
really good at making pretty convincing predictions
Pretty good
about the
ones.
future and
Yeah.
things like that. Even like robotics have taken, like people who are engineers have sort of taken some of his principles of robotics and they've like applied it to their work, I think, right? Like the
Yeah.
laws of robotics, I think, are actually like a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Am I mistaken about that? I thought that was true.
I haven't actually read much of Asimov, so I don't know much about those particular
So
predictions.
iRobot, right? The laws of robotics that keep robots from harming humans.
Gotcha,
It's
gotcha.
Like the hierarchy of
Yes.
laws that they follow. Anyway,
And that's more or less held with AI
I
and
thought
stuff?
so. I could be completely wrong about that.
I don't know.
I thought I remembered reading that.
I do
being a
remember
thing.
that, and then there's the conflict of protect humans from themselves, and then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, then what do you do?
Anyways, as good as he was at some of his predictions, he predicted that in a very, very
Like
far
1,000
distance,
years,
like
right?
15,000
Oh my
years.
gosh.
A galactic civilization
Yeah.
in which they don't even know the origins of their own species. They don't
Okay,
even know
yeah.
what planet they came from anymore. Like that history has been lost, which
Yeah.
feels very convincing and believable, right? Like if you go back 10,000 years in our past, like
Oh,
what
dude, we
records
don't
do
know
we
anything,
have?
yeah.
Yeah, right.
We know very little.
So 15,000 years in the future, it's a galactic civilization. They're arguing about which planet was like the birth planet
The
of the
first
human
one.
race, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But people read newspapers.
They still read newspapers. Yep.
It's just like, okay, like foresight on some things that just in other areas, it's impossible to do
I
that,
know.
right?
You
But
can't know what's going to happen, what new technology is going to replace everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, just keep that in mind in terms of this gene therapy stuff with this game.
It's funny because they technically can cure cancer, but then it leads to the degradation of the DNA way too quickly, right? Because you
Right.
just get rid of the repair mechanism.
Right. And
So it's like, okay, well, that's not exactly a good thing.
Another thing to keep in mind is that like the world of Metal Gear Solid diverts pretty quickly away from, because they talk about like the
real
Watergate scandal.
Yeah, Watergate.
It's like
J. Edgar Hoover.
yeah, it's like this is the way I would look at this. Metal Gear Solid's world was like the same as ours up until about the 1980s-ish. And then it's like an alternate reality split,
Gotcha.
basically.
That's like Nier. Nier
Yes.
did something similar.
And basically what comes in the following games is such a completely different world that there's no point in really like being as thorough, I guess, in sort of like
Yeah.
talking about like, is this realistic or not? It diverges to such a point where it's just a totally different universe, basically. And it is consistent with itself going forward, but it will not be very consistent with our world, right? So just keep that in mind.
Fair enough.
Okay. So he says to Snake, Campbell does, Snake, we can't give them his body. It's potentially more dangerous than all the nuclear warheads on that island put together. I laughed out loud at that when I played it.
How many nukes were there?
I don't know. There's at least one, but
Oh, there's multiple. They say later in the game there's a whole warehouse full of nuclear warheads.
So I was sitting there talking with the chat when I was streaming this about like how can any army of human beings, no matter how advanced they
Beat
are,
nukes.
be
Yeah.
more dangerous than nukes. And it's been a
Yeah.
long time, like a really long time, since I've played this series, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of remembering stuff as I'm going through it. But they assure me that it makes sense in universe here to say that, because
Okay.
it's not so much about sheer destructive power as it is about like control. And like this is going to become more clear with like later games.
Okay.
So anyways, like just take that for what it is with that
Gotcha.
statement. But the terrorists are calling themselves the Sons of Big Boss. And that may seem like, okay, that's a cool name or whatever. They want Big Boss's remains to do this gene therapy stuff. But it's actually more significant than you think. So just keep that in mind for later. Okay, Snake is given 2 objectives. First, rescue the DARPA chief. DARPA stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It's a real agency.
It's a real agency, yeah.
His name is Chief Donald Anderson. And then the president of Arms Tech, a private weapons developer.
Yeah.
The company is called Arms Tech.
Which I don't think that one's real.
I don't think that one's real. His name is Kenneth Baker. The 2 of them are being held hostage. And so that's his first objective, save those guys.
Yeah.
Secondly, he has to ascertain whether the terrorists really have the capability of launching a nuke.
Yeah.
And if they do, stop them from doing it.
Yes.
So those are the 2 main objectives for Snake on this mission. Took down some dialogue I thought was kind of funny in that B-movie kind of way, in that Kung Fury kind of way.
Yeah.
Is your life in Alaska really all that great? There's a dog sled race next week. Next Saturday, I have to be in Anchorage.
I love that. Yeah, he's a musher.
Yeah.
He says that later on.
When did you become a dog musher?
Yeah.
It's like, right now, my 50 huskies are my only family. I've got to take care of them. It's like, it's such a ridiculous line of dialogue.
But I love that.
But it's delivered perfectly.
It's so good.
My 50 huskies are my only family. You can like, I don't know, it's just...
And how
it's
serious
awesome.
he is.
Yeah,
and
he's
then,
like
but how
very serious about
hardcore,
it.
but then he's got all these little dogs, you know, it's
Yeah.
just great.
So Campbell goes on to say, like, you will accept this assignment. Like, basically, you're going to do it no matter what. Because he tells him you don't have to worry about your dogs anymore. It's like, what do you mean by that, right?
Yeah.
So then he's like, why should I be stupid enough to do that? I'm no patriot. And then Campbell says, Snake, there's enough dirt in your file from your days as an agent to keep you in the stockade until you're a very old man. So it's, oh, I see, blackmail.
Yes.
It's like, no, Snake, I prefer to look at it as helping you come to a decision more easily. But anyway,
Campbell.
I know you better than that. You take this assignment even without the threat. And then he's like, okay, why do you say that? You're a natural-born soldier. This is also kind of B-movie cliche to me.
Yeah.
You're a natural-born soldier.
Yep.
You're not the one to grow old gracefully. It's the same for all of us who have seen real action. The only place we can feel truly alive is on the battlefield.
There you go.
You've tried to play the Boy Scout out there in Alaska, but you can't race dogs in the snow forever. So it's like, you know, I know you.
Nice.
You have to fight to feel alive, kind of a thing, right?
Yep.
Once a soldier, always a soldier. So he goes on to explain how even with the most advanced equipment, they cannot see inside of that base on Shadow Moses, which is why they need someone to actually infiltrate and report. And then Snake says, sounds like a spy movie.
Of course.
And this is another example from the Twin Snakes version I hated. Here he just says, sounds like a spy movie. And it's a funny line. It's
Right.
It's
Because
silly.
this does. What I wrote down here was this has a very Mission Impossible feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in the Twin Snakes version, he does the James Bond gun, you know, how they all open up.
At the security camera?
Yeah, no, he does it at Campbell.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like a spy movie. It's just, it's so lame, dude. It's cringy as fetch. Like, that's stepping over the line. The line itself is already silly
I know.
enough.
It already almost breaks the fourth wall. It calls attention to the fact that you're playing a game that's meant to be kind of like a movie.
It's already silly. You don't have to, like, make it more so by, like, It's so stupid, dude. So then he asks what the insertion method is, and he talks about how they're going to take a sub within a few miles, but they can't get too close because the engines will be heard
They'll
by,
get picked up.
you know, sonar within the base.
Yeah.
So then we're going to shoot you in a torpedo, but that doesn't have its own propulsion system. They call it an SDV, which is a swimmer delivery vehicle.
Which is a real thing.
Yes.
My grandfather was a Navy SEAL in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. My grand-uncle, not grandfather.
Yeah.
Well, How'd you put it?
Your grandfather's brother.
An old dude, yeah. My grandfather, no, my grandmother's sister's husband.
Oh, there
so
you
we're not
go.
actually
Okay.
genetically related. So we're mimetically related, but not genetically. Okay, so anyways, he was a Navy SEAL in Vietnam, and that was kind of when the Navy SEALs were first, getting going. And he did this same kind of thing. He got shot out of a submarine in it was like a missile, but it was him. He was
crazy.
inside of it, and it was like.
This is probably something that they were advised on then by the military.
I'll bet
dudes.
you, yeah, I'll bet you.
Like you could do this, that's how it's been done.
Yeah, just shoot it out, but then at some point he has to abandon the little ship and then swim the rest of the way.
Because it has no propulsion of its own.
Yeah.
So once it comes to a stop, he's got to dispose of that and then swim the rest of the way. And he's like, "You want me to swim through sub-zero Alaskan water?" And he's like, "Don't worry, we've given you the latest in thermal diving suits, and you've got the antifreeze peptide thing in your nanomachine injection you just got." So
I can't imagine how that works, but that's just great.
And then he asks, "Anyone going with me?" And Campbell says, "As usual, it's a one-man infiltration mission." And Snake asks, "Weapons and equipment OSP?" And I kind of like that they do this.
They don't tell you exactly what it means.
Yeah, they don't tell you what it means in the dialogue, but he will put in parentheses in the what do you call it?
The subtitle.
The subtitle.
Yeah. On-site procurement.
Yeah, on-site procurement. But he doesn't have to explain to Snake what OSP means so that the audience understands it.
As you know.
Yeah, right. They kind of avoid that.
At this point, they do, yeah.
By just in the text itself, putting in parentheses what that means. And they do that several times so that you can kind of follow the terminology, the jargon, right?
There's another way of putting it later on, I think we'll still get to it here, but is that I think Campbell tells Snake that he's naked. It's like, remember, you're naked, no equipment or weapons, right? I bring that up a little bit later on to illustrate a different point, but yeah, they're using these words like naked. What does it mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, it means you're vulnerable, right?
Yes, right.
Doesn't mean you're really naked.
Exactly. So weapons and equipment OSP, he says, yes, this is a top secret black op, don't expect any official support.
Yes, no one knows you're here, and if they find you, we will disavow.
Yep. Which is very Mission Impossible.
Yes, very much so.
Very much kind of what those scenarios are like. It's like no one is supposed to know you're doing this, and if you mess it up, we're going to pretend that you were rogue and that we never sent you in there. It was not us, it was you. So
the voice acting in the intro, I think, is actually really good.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Really good. So Snake has 24 hours to complete the mission at the time he's here, even though 5 hours ago the demand was made. So what would that be? 29
19
hours.
Oh, I see.
Total.
Down to 24.
But then by the time he actually gets on site, it's going to be 18 hours.
Okay.
So at the time that they're here talking to each other, it's 24 hours before the deadline. That's when they claim that they'll launch a nuke if they haven't received the remains of Big Boss yet. But they have not mentioned a target. So they don't know who they're shooting at. And so Snake is talking about like, well, has Washington called the COG yet? And they don't tell you what that is in the text. I think it means Council of Governments, which is like, we don't know where this nuke might go, so the governmental leaders all come to a place and they go somewhere safe underground.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's what he's referring to. Like, have they called the COG yet? Basically, get all the presidents in a place so that they don't die, so that the governments can continue running if some capital
That sounds like
nuked.
that could be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Call the COG and then nuke that place.
Right.
Now every leader's dead.
Right.
But they won't do it because there's a treaty that's about to be signed the very next day. That's like is it a denuclearization or something? They call it the something 3 agreement.
Yeah,
right?
I can't remember.
And it's between Russia and America, and America doesn't want word to get out that this incident's happening, because if it does, and if everyone in the world knows
that they're developing Metal
then
Gear.
it will be a problem, right?
Yeah, right.
Because we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So that's why it's like, no, you can't call a COG.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to admit that there's stuff going on here that puts them all at risk.
Yeah. And also, he says the Secretary of Defense is sort of like directly. It's like the President of the United States is basically like...
He's out of the loop.
Well, he's in the loop in the sense that it's going all the way up to that level of chain of command, but like, they haven't called the COG yet, so the Secretary of Defense is handling this.
He's handling it. That's
right now.
And they say the president needs to maintain plausible deniability, so he can't be all that involved in this stuff.
So, okay. Let's see. Oh, Snake then mentions that they need a nuclear weapons specialist, not some like desk jockey guy, because Campbell says that they've already been assigned one. He's like, we don't need some desk dude. We need like a real, nuclear weapons specialist. And he's like, no, of course we know that. It's going to be Nastasha Romanenko. And then her profile, they're showing her profile as like he's talking about her.
Yeah.
She was born in Ukraine, and her family was showered by the radiation from the Chernobyl disaster.
Oh, of course.
Her parents were involved and assisted in the cleanup, and then they died.
Yeah.
And then she came to America and joined the DIA, and sort of like that's how she got involved. I laughed at this too. Snake says, a female analyst? Like, okay, dude.
But he's excited, though.
Yes. But anyway.
He likes women a lot.
Snake's a little chauvinistic there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Campbell assures him she's built up an impressive record as an advisor for the nuclear emergency search team, so she knows what she's doing. Okay, so then Snake says, Colonel, you're retired. Why are you involved in this? And Campbell says, because there aren't many people who know Foxhound as well as I do. And then Snake says, is that really the only reason? And he says, I've been soldiering for a long time. I don't know anything else. I guess even though I'm getting a little old, I still love to be in the field. And he said, Snake says, Colonel, you're a lousy liar. Tell me the real reason. And he says, okay, Snake, sorry, I'll be frank. And basically his niece, Meryl Silverberg, is a hostage there at the base as well. She was called in. She's a rookie soldier.
Yeah,
she's only 18. You see that in her profile. She's really young. So she was called in as a replacement when several soldiers from the base went missing, like a few days ago. So she was one of the soldiers sent to replace them on the day of the revolt. And her profile says that she has no real combat experience at all, but has gone through VR simulation combat training.
Of course.
They kind of bring that up a couple times. And they have a VR simulation sort of combat training mini game in the menu start screen as well. Kind of before you start a new game, you can go to the VR and like do a whole bunch of levels to like train and learn how to play the game.
I didn't do that. That would have been helpful.
Also, I wrote lol on this.
What?
Has received psychotherapy not to be attracted to those of the opposite sex. It's just like, why, dude? Why is that necessary?
I can tell you some that if she's in the military, she's with a bunch of dudes all the time.
Sure.
Now,
that happens for real women in real life.
I know, it's life.
Why
it's normal.
would we? Why?
That's all that I got to say about that.
It's so dumb, dude. Anyway.
So she's
received official like psychotherapy to not be attracted to those of the opposite sex. Okay. Snake asks why the DARPA chief and the president of Arms Tech were at the facility at all. He's like, why were they there? It's fishy. Campbell explains that they were doing these secret exercises and tests. And Snake asks if they were testing a weapon. And Campbell says he's not privy to that information. Of course, we learn when we go talk to them directly, that's exactly what they were doing. They were testing a new Metal Gear.
Yes.
Arms Tech was the private company hired by the United States to develop a new Metal Gear that they would use as a deterrent for other countries.
It's always defensive.
Programs.
Yeah, defensively, of course. Defensively.
That's
we
the
need
claim.
20,000 nukes defensively. Yes, okay, yeah.
So that's what's really going on, but Campbell is claiming not to know that. He claims not to know many things.
Yes.
The DARPA chief, Anderson, was also injected with nanomachines, says Dr. Hunter. So Snake will be able to locate him with his radar when he shows up. So the radar that he has, which was actually developed by Mei Ling, who we're going to meet in a bit.
Yes, yeah.
Those injected with the nanomachines, you can see them on the radar.
You can see them, that's good.
So that's how that works. Let's see. Snake asks if the terrorists really do have a capability to launch a nuke or not, and Campbell says that the terrorists gave them the serial number of the warhead they're going to use. And when they checked it, it checks out. So they do really have
They have a nuke.
a warhead.
The question is, can they launch
Can
it?
they actually launch it or not?
Yeah.
Because in those disposal facilities, as Snake is saying, the missile and the warhead are meant to be disassembled from each other. So like it's not that easy to just like get a launchable nuke. Like
Yeah.
there's like, since the Cold War, there are steps in place to avoid this.
Yeah.
He says, and then Campbell says something like, that used to be true, but these days, like anyone with enough money on the black market's going to be able to like get a nuke if they want one. So he says, every missile and warhead in our arsenal is equipped with a PAL, which is permissive action link, which uses a discrete detonation code, the safety protocol system built into all nuclear weapon systems. But even so, we can't rest easy. The DARPA chief knows the detonation code. So this is why it's a huge problem. Because the guys that they have hostage know the codes, and they're torturing them to get the codes.
Yes.
But even if they have the nuclear have a nuclear warhead, says Snake, it must have been removed from its missile. All the missiles on these disposal sites are supposed to be dismantled. It's not that easy to get your hands on an ICBM. And then Campbell says that used to be true, but since the end of the Cold War, you can get anything if you have enough money and the right connections. Right. So then Snake asks about their arms and battle experience. Campbell explains that 6 members of Foxhound are in charge, and they're all hardened veterans. They're tough enough to eat nails and ask for seconds.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Going into who these characters are,
Yes.
without knowing who they are initially,
Yes.
they all have like superhero names. You know? And
it's like Saturday morning cartoon characters.
It's straight up Saturday morning cartoon characters.
This was one change to the script in the Twin Snakes version I really liked.
Oh, really?
Snake calls them that. He says they sound like cartoon characters.
Oh, good.
So that brings some self-awareness to that element that I actually thought was pretty good.
Okay.
That's the one change in the Twin Snakes version that I thought was better.
Even still, they all have magic powers, you know?
Yes,
they all
pretty much.
They're all superheroes with superpowers.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
But like their names even. Psycho Mantis.
Psycho Mantis.
Vulcan Raven.
Yeah.
Sniper Wolf. Like this sounds like something you'd see on a children's Saturday morning cartoon from the 90s.
Totally.
This is totally TMNT.
Yeah,
like
G.I. Joe.
X-Men, G.I. Joe stuff.
Yeah.
In this game where they're talking about like all the ins and outs of
DARPA,
nuclear disposal facilities and
then it's like,
ICBMs
oh yes, Psycho Mantis. Yes, of course, of course.
That should not fit, but somehow it does.
Yeah.
I think even in this version of the game, he says something like, I don't know, he calls out attention to how weird their names are, but I don't remember how he says it.
But in the very last one, he mentions the name Liquid Snake.
Yes.
He says the one with the same code name as you.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, these are code names.
Yes.
That makes it a lot more palatable.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
I wish they had started by saying, these are code names. These are not the actual, like, Dr. Octorok.
They're real names.
Yeah, I was like, dude, what is this? Oh, they're code names. It just took a minute for it to stick.
Yeah, and he actually brings that up because, like, I thought they stopped using code names around the time that I retired from Foxhound or whatever.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. But, what was I going to say about that? It's kind of like... the call names in, say, Top Gun or something like that, right?
Sure.
They all have their call names. Maverick.
They have a call name, Maverick, or I guess this is just numbers. But in Star Wars, it's like Rogue One, Rogue 2, Rogue 3. They're all just numbers, but it could easily be a word instead of a number. So
they all have those code names.
Yeah.
Code name. Okay, and then the other mercenaries and special forces that they have, right? He explains what they're all about. They started out as an anti-terrorist special ops unit made up of former members of biochem units, technical escort units, and the nuclear emergency search team. Their purpose was to respond to threats involving next-generation weapons of mass destruction, including NBC weapons. And then Naomi says, until they, in quotes, were added, that is. This was a little more clear in the Twin Snakes version too, because she's looking at a file when she says that, and then Snake turns to her and says, "Who do you mean by they?" And then she hands him a file, and he's like looking at it.
Oh, okay.
So it makes it a little more clear. These guys in the file that he's now looking at didn't start out as regular army. Looks like a pretty international. Looks like a pretty international group. Mercenaries.
They're from all over,
Yeah. And Campbell says, yeah, and it gets worse. Most of them were from a merc agency that I think you're familiar with. They were part of Big Boss's private guard. And after Big Boss went down, the military just bought out their contracts. And then Snake says Outer Heaven. So these are the dudes he fought in Outer Heaven in Metal Gear 1. They are now part of this group of mercs that are sort of like here in Shadow Moses. So a lot of elements from the first game are kind of coming back up again here.
Yep.
After that, they were merged with our own VR unit, Force 21, and retained. If you ask me, these so-called next-generation special forces should be called simulated soldiers. They have no real battle experience. And then Snake says, video game players, huh?
Nice.
Great, right? Don't forget, they've all been strengthened with gene therapy, says Dr. Hunter. They carry genes which make them excellent soldiers. Don't get careless just because they don't have much experience. So they've all been through gene therapy. She also mentions they're like all freaking geniuses with IQs over 180 and like all this stuff. And so like, they don't seem like it when they're walking around going, what's this? Whose footprints are these?
I know, they sure don't seem,
Guess it's nothing.
Guess it's nothing. You can, I did this, I didn't find this out till later, but if you're in a pinch, you can go up behind somebody, like grab them, throw them on the ground and run past them, and they'll like not.
Get up and be like,
they'll be like, what was that? Oh, I guess it was nothing. Like,
these
what?
Geniuses, level
These
180 IQ.
Absolute geniuses.
What's this? Oh, it's just a box.
Now,
walk away.
You forgive it before you realize they're,
Yeah.
well, I guess without thinking that they're supposed to be these perfect super soldiers. But you know what's funny? When I think of like the perfect soldier, I actually think of the movie Forrest Gump.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because there's is it Arlie Ermy? Is it Arlie Ermy? I can't remember. Whoever it was who was training him at boot camp was telling him, you're the best soldier I've ever seen. Because all he ever does is just do whatever they tell him to do.
Yes,
exactly as they told him to do it.
Right. That's
perfectly.
Right.
But
that's right.
IQ-wise, I mean, 60s actually, maybe for Forrest Gump. But it's like that made him the best soldier, was having actually kind of like a lower IQ.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
These high IQ soldiers, they're going to be the ones that'll second guess.
They would
command.
be second guessing.
They'll be coming up with their own ideas.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and for lots of reasons.
They're not going to want to follow an order because they're going to think of all the reasons why it wouldn't make sense to do that. Or
they wouldn't be willing to be grunts because they know that they've got other plans, right?
Good point. Okay, so we talked about the 6 members of Foxhound. We got up to Liquid Snake.
Yes.
And then he hands him a picture of Liquid Snake, and this is shocking because he looks just like Solid Snake.
Yeah.
Identical. And this soldier's Liquid Snake actually was raised in England and was in like the British Secret Service, I think SIS.
SAS or SIS.
Well, he went into SIS. Originally, he was in the SAS.
SAS, yeah. It's like the Air Force thing.
Yeah, he fought in the Gulf War. He was rescued by the U.S. from, he was taken captive there, and then he went back into the SIS. He was like a sleeper for them. Never once showed his face in Century House, he says. He's taken prisoner in Iraq, and after that, there was no trace of him for several years. After you retired, he was rescued and became a member of Foxhound. So after Solid Snake left, Liquid Snake came into Foxhound. Now he's leading Foxhound.
It's so weird because I hadn't played any of the games before this, right?
Yeah.
So they're talking about, we used to be part of Foxhound. I was the leader of Foxhound. You used to be in Foxhound. And Foxhound is the bad guys.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, but that's... First playing this game, it wasn't clear exactly. I thought we were Foxhound and they were something else. Or they were Foxhound, but we were... Yeah. We're just nothing, I guess.
Yeah, this is Foxhound is Rogue now, but it used to be...
But it used to not be.
Yes.
Just a few years earlier.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Except that... Big Boss was leading them, and Big Boss was Rogue.
I know, yeah. I did get that much for sure. And I understood it as I played more, but it wasn't apparent at first, that's for sure.
I agree. Even with all of this exposition and this extremely long, 20-plus minute scene, there's still things that, if you have not played they do a pretty good job of talking in a way that, lets you know that they've known each other before. In Metal Gear 2, Campbell led Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Campbell was the commander of Foxhound and was like Snake's superior. That's how they knew each other. But before that, it was Big Boss in Metal Gear 1, right? So anyway.
I like the name Liquid Snake, right? Because now we have solid and liquid.
Yes.
So they're named the same so that they're going to be similar, but they have different adjectives that describe them,
Yes.
right? And they're like opposites, right? So that's telling us that while they may look the same, the outer shell, the name, the appearance, their interiors will be very different, complete opposites, right? So Liquid Snake will be the antithesis to Solid Snake. And I put in my notes here, I take notes as I'm playing, right? So I say, I see where this might be going, ...
Yeah. So, I don't know his real name. That information is so highly classified that even I can't look at it, but here's a photo of him. And pretty shocking, huh? His skin tone is different, but otherwise you're exact duplicates. And Snake says, I have a twin? Because he has no idea, like, who this could be, right?
Yeah.
And Campbell says, I don't know the details, but it seems so. That's why we really need you for this mission. And then Naomi's line here is funny to me. I put lol again. You're the only one who can beat him. Now that I've met you, I know. You've got something he doesn't. I can see it in your eyes. Okay.
Very nice. Thank you, Naomi.
And then Snake says, why don't I find that thought more comforting? And that's kind of the end of that one. And then, this leads to the end of it. So then at the end of this, the last part of it is Snake is like, give me your scissors real quick. She's like, for what? And he starts cutting his hair. And he says, I don't want to be mistaken for the leader of the terrorists. And I'm sitting here like, why would you not want that?
That's a godsend.
That's exactly what you want.
Oh my
for
gosh.
Infiltrating. It's like,
yes,
what?
But Solid Snake has principles.
I guess so. Well, that's brought up a lot.
Even if the entire world is going to face a nuclear bomb, he will be himself, darn it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But no, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
You absolutely should look exactly like Liquid
Yes,
and should
look
go in there
as much as
posing
you can.
as Liquid anytime they see you.
Get an English accent, just kind of practice that a bit. Spend the next 6 hours practicing your accent. Don't worry about any of this stuff. Yeah.
Anyway, it took a lot longer to get through that than I thought it was going to. So I think we might want to actually end here and then continue into the actual start of the game next time.
Fair enough.
We're going to leave off there. And we'll continue next time into the actual infiltration. And this time we will for sure be getting up to the point where you fight against the cyborg ninja. I'll call him for now.
There you go.
That boss fight.
Good.
We'll end there for next episode. So, thanks for watching. I know. I wanted to get through more, but like, that's kind of a dense little segment there.
Yes, very much so.
And understanding that, like everything that's going out in that briefing mission, will really help you understand.
Very much so.
What's going on in the rest of the game. If you skipped this, it might have been really confusing at points. So
yeah.
And even if you've seen it before and you haven't like paid really close attention by watching it a second time and like really looking at it, can be like, oh, what's this again? What's that? Oh, this jargon. Anyways, it helps you put it together. So
yeah.
Hopefully that's good for this week. We'll see you next week. Peace out.